Welcome to our 2024 year in review video. So, we'll start out in January. Aiden and I attended the Arizona Bowl for the second year in a row at the end of December, where Wyoming won this time against Toledo. And then we flew back from Tucson back to Chicago, where while we were waiting for our connecting flight, our oldest son Alex, who had been visiting in Ohio, got off the plane that we were going to get on his way back to Tucson, where he was living at the time. So we visited him for a couple minutes. Then a couple weeks into January, Kim and Aiden flew back to Denver, and she drove him back to Laramie for his spring semester. And then she spent some time driving around the state of Wyoming for her job, as she's going to visit schools all over the state, and took some pictures as she was driving around of the snowy range and the red desert. She also visited Devil's Tower National Monument. And in Casper, she stopped to visit our property that was there and see what it looks like in the winter. And then returned through Cheyenne to Denver and flew back home to Ohio. Meanwhile, in Ohio, I was completing or working on refinishing the second bathroom in the house we were living in at the time, because the plumbing had all been leaking. On to February, work continued on renovating this bathroom, trying to get the house ready to put up for sale in the spring. So this bathroom was taken down to its studs, everything removed, replaced pretty much everything. Shows some of the progress as we went through during the month of February. Getting ready to put tile surround around the bathtub, and there's tile as it's in the middle of being installed before being grouted. After grout has been applied. This was our first time doing tile, so it was an interesting experience. Good learning experience. Moving into March, the bathroom renovation continued. Started moving on to the ceiling, where we put some cedar shiplap, and we also tiled the floor. And in the middle of the month, Kim and I drove to Baltimore while Aaron got a flight out of Cleveland. We headed to Ireland. Aaron directly and us via Reykjavik, Iceland, because we flew Icelandair. And went to Ireland, where Aaron's high school band marched in the Dublin St. Patrick's Day Parade. And we were there about a week. So we were in Dublin a couple days, then we drove, visited Kilkenny Castle, Waterford, Cork, went to Blarney Castle, where this picture was taken. These are the wishing steps at Blarney Castle. This is Blarney Castle itself. These are some of the grounds and gardens at Blarney Castle. Went over to Killarney, did the Ring of Kerry. Some of the pictures on the Ring of Kerry here, different cliffs and things like that. Kerry Cliffs, for instance. We then went up to the cliffs of Moher. It was extremely windy and rainy and foggy. This is about as good a picture or a scene as we got of the cliffs. Then went up and stayed the night in Galway, visited there for a day or so, and then drove back over to Dublin. And caught our flight back to Baltimore and drove back to Ohio. After we got back, Kim flew from Cleveland to Phoenix and met Alex and Andy, our two oldest sons, and spent a few days with them over Easter in Page, or near Page, Arizona, doing some hiking and just general visiting while I was at home, continuing to work on the bathroom and getting the house ready for sale. And then she returned home. And she helped out, continuing to work on the bathroom renovation. Now, in April, we started a lot of traveling and moving. So we loaded up our first U-Haul truck and trailer and moved stuff to Wyoming. And I drove the truck out on this route. I've drove a couple different routes because I like to new counties visited, so try to change up the route whenever I can. So I drove the truck out. Kim flew out and picked up Aiden in Laramie and drove him over to Cheyenne to meet me, where we unloaded the truck into the rental house that we were staying at when we first got out here, into the garage of the rental house because they were still fixing it up, getting ready for us. I then flew from Cheyenne back to Ohio via Denver. And Kim remained in Wyoming to again go around and visit various schools, and also spent the weekend as she was traveling in Jackson and visiting Grand Teton in the late winter, early spring in Wyoming. And she stayed there over the weekend while she was visiting the schools, so she got to see some wildlife, some moose, fox, coyote. And then she continued on her trip visiting the various schools that she works with as part of her job. And then she returned to Denver and flew back to Ohio. We were then able to finish the bathroom renovation, which was the last major project that needed done before we were able to list the house for sale. And Aaron was in the stage crew and had a small part in the high school musical, which was Oliver. And we finally put the house up for sale. It was for sale for about a week before it was under contract. Moving into May, after getting the house done and ready to go, I did a trip through northern Pennsylvania and western New York to collect the various counties that I had not yet got in northern Pennsylvania and western New York. So I have all the counties in Pennsylvania now and all the counties in western New York. Spent 2 days doing that. Then we flew to Tucson via Denver. Him and I did. Aaron stayed home, supposedly to go to the prom, but then ended up not going to the prom. Went to Cedar Point instead, amusement park. But we flew to Tucson with my parents and Kim's parents. And Aiden came down a couple days later, as well as Andy, after they were done with work and school for Alex's graduation from the University of Arizona with his PhD in geosciences. After graduation, we returned back to Ohio along with Aiden because he was done for the school year, so he flew back with us. I then drove our car that Aaron drives to Wyoming in order to get the license and registration transferred, and took a roundabout route to get some more counties, and had the excitement of getting almost caught in a tornado west of Omaha at 2:30 in the morning and thrown back to Iowa. Luckily, I was able to find somewhere to park and wait it out, but that was very exciting. So I left the car in Cheyenne and flew back to Ohio via Denver, where we then were able to attend Aaron's high school graduation. Then in June, we had a graduation party for Aaron, and then packed up the truck and sold the house. And Aiden and I drove the truck with the 3 cats on the seat between us to Wyoming via Colorado Springs, because U-Haul gave me a deal if I hauled a trailer for somebody else and dropped it off there. So that was a long drive straight through, and Aiden and I unloaded that truck into the rental house. Then while we were there, we went around and looked at a few houses for sale in various places. Glen Rock, this is a barn of a place that we looked at in Glen Rock. This is a house in the mountains in Esterbrook, Wyoming, that we very seriously thought about buying, but ended up not. We also went for a hike in the Snowy Range. So this is the Snowy Range in early June. Still a lot of snow and ice, as you can see. And some marmots. Then I again flew back to Ohio to get my truck and the 3 dogs, and the 4 of us drove back out again straight through to Wyoming. Let's see, a different route so that I could get some more counties I was missing in Minnesota, South Dakota, Nebraska, etc. At the same time, Kim and her friend Becky were driving her car out where they stopped at Indiana Dunes National Park, as well as some other places on the way. They took a slightly different route, but similar. They went to Laurel Ingalls Wilder's birthplace, her childhood home in Walnut Grove, Minnesota. They went to the Corn Palace. On South Dakota. Also in South Dakota, they went to Wall Drug. And Badlands National Park. Then they drove down around Mount Rushmore. This is some of the area around there before they got there, and then visited Mount Rushmore. And saw some wildlife. And then continued on back to Cheyenne. Meanwhile, Aiden and I went to see the Pirates get crushed by the Rockies. Then I drove to Denver and flew to Tucson to help Alex and Katie pack up their rental house there, and I drove their U-Haul for them while they drove their cars as they moved back to Colorado for his new job in Golden. Kim met us there and we helped unload and then went back home. Then Alex and I took the car that I had driven out in May and we drove it back to Ohio after I got the registration done to give back to Aaron so he could replace my dad's car that he was using. In the way, we stopped at the center of the geographic United States in Kansas, where Alex excitedly rode on this spring horse in the park that's there at the center of the U.S. And we also stopped to see the world's largest ball of twine, also in northern Kansas. Very exciting. We continued on, going a roundabout way in order to again get more counties, Kansas and Missouri, Illinois. So, unfortunately, when we were moving, we didn't fit all our stuff in the truck. So I had to put some stuff in storage and lease back our garage for a month from the new owner. And we put stuff in it. So Alex and Aaron and I loaded up the stuff from the garage. This was the old house. And Alex and I gave Aaron his car back. And we drove the U-Haul back to Cheyenne. So this was almost everything. The stuff we had put in storage didn't fit in this truck, so I had to make one more trip to get that stuff. On July. So in July, we went on a hike over the 4th of July at Kirk County State Park, which is just west of Cheyenne. Kim and I did. These are some of the views from that hike. And we also went to see Billy Joel at Coors Field in Denver for a concert. We then drove to Lincoln, Kim and I did, since she had a conference that she was attending for a couple days there. So we drove out and went to Lincoln. We went to the Lincoln minor league baseball team's game. We also went to the Lincoln Zoo where they had an after dinner event or a dinner event for the conference that she was at. So we got to see some of the animals there. And we rode the train. I always like to ride the train. Trains are exciting. We then did Moose Day with the University of Wyoming's Biological Sciences. They have a citizen science program where they have you go out, go on not a trail, but an area they've marked, and do a census of large mammals and try to find moose. We did not find any moose, but we did see some other things. We also attended the Jason Aldean concert as part of Cheyenne Frontier Days and the semifinal day of the rodeo. Moving on to August, we did a hike with Aiden of Medicine Bow Peak in the Snowy Range. This is at the top, at the summit of Medicine Bow Peak, which is the highest point in the Snowy Range, which is a range of the Rocky Mountains in southern Wyoming. Some views from that hike. We also attended a couple of Cheyenne community band concerts in the park in Cheyenne. Then Kim and I flew back to Ohio yet again via Chicago for Kim to help move Aaron into his dorm for his first year in college, and to get one last U-Haul truck to empty the storage unit that we had rented at the last minute to put stuff that we couldn't fit in the truck or in the garage at the old house. So I got that truck, we got it loaded up, and I drove it back to Cheyenne and got it unloaded while Kim was assisting Aaron with moving in and also visiting her parents in Pennsylvania for a day or two. And then she flew back to Denver, where I picked her up and we returned home. And shortly after that, we went with Alex and Katie to Denver to see Wicked, the musical, not the movie. And then over to Wyoming for the band preview show day before the season started for Aiden's third year in the band. We then did another hike in the Vidvu, which is again west of Cheyenne, between Cheyenne and Laramie. So Kim and I did this hike. This was one of the first videos that we posted, actually, maybe the first video on our page was regarding this hike. We then got ready to close on our new house. This was during the walkthrough with all the marking, all the paint that needed touched up and things like that. Then in September, we attended the first Wyoming home football game. We had season tickets, although we missed a couple games for various things. So. And then out of the day after the first game, Kim and I got on a plane and flew to Vancouver via Seattle to go on a cruise that we had planned for a while, which was to go to Alaskan cruise. This was our empty nest celebration cruise, I guess. It was round trip from Vancouver, 10 days on the Queen Elizabeth. We went to Ketchikan, Juneau, Hubbard Glacier. This is in Ketchikan. Saw bald eagles, saw a good bit of wildlife. We went to Juneau, where we did a sled dog camp excursion, which Kim was very excited about, to see all the puppies and little dogs. They had some really young puppies that were there. Kim did not try to steal one, although I think she considered it. So after Juneau, we went to Hubbard Glacier, which is a cruise by, basically. And then we went to Glacier Bay National Park and Preserve, which is cool because a lot of the cruises don't go there. They only get 2 ships in per day into the national park, and the Park Service comes on and does a running commentary during the cruise about the park and wildlife and things like that. We were then supposed to go to Skagway, but couldn't dock because of the weather. So we went up there, but then turned around and came back down. And then went to Sitka, where we did a little cruise and a bear. Went to visit a bear refuge for orphaned bears that had been rescued. We also had a masquerade night on the cruise. A couple formal nights, and it was fun to get dressed up for a change, since we generally are in sweatpants or jeans all the time. The final stop on the cruise before the end was in Victoria, British Columbia, where we went on a whale watching cruise. We were originally scheduled for a walking tour, but I think we were the only 2 people who signed up, so it got canceled. So we scheduled a whale watching instead, where we saw some orcas and some humpback whales, and among other things. Then for a couple days after we got back from the cruise, we stayed in Canada and went to Whistler, up north of Vancouver, and we did some hiking there, and saw some of the sights from the Olympic venues from when the Olympics were there in 2010. And then returned back to Vancouver. This drive is on this, what they call the Sea to Sky Highway. It was very scenic, very nice drive up there. It's a couple-hour drive. And then we flew from Vancouver back to Denver and returned home after the cruise to get ready to move into our new house. But we also then went for a drive in the snowy range because Kim didn't see any moose on the cruise and was very upset. So we went looking for them and to see leaves. And we found some. Went to another University of Wyoming game, and then moved into October. In October, we were finally moved into the new house and starting to install some things like shower curtains and medicine cabinets and things like that. Got some topsoil delivered to try to get rid of the sand burrs. Also got lumber for a shed that we needed to build for storage. Had a couple nights where we could see the northern lights pretty well. Then we got back on a plane and returned to Seattle for another conference that Kim was attending for work. And then we went to the Space Needle, where this is taken, and Pike Place Market. We also had a chance to drive down one day to Mount Rainier National Park, which was a nice visit and a nice, pretty drive, except for the last little bit of it was really long because the traffic was really quite bad. But we did see Mount Rainier. Then we also had a chance to drive over to Roslyn, Washington, which is where they filmed the TV show Northern Exposure. They've also filmed some other things there. It served as Canyon City, Colorado, I believe, in the show Man and I Castle, and I think some other things, but mostly known for Northern Exposure. And we had lunch at the Brick. And then we returned back home from that conference. Then after being home for a couple days, we got in the car and we drove to Salt Lake City to visit Andy, our second oldest son, and his girlfriend Olivia. And went and saw them. We went bowling, as we frequently do when we visit them. And then we went up past some of the ski resorts. We went to Park City, and we went up to visit the Golden Spike National Memorial, where their monument, where the Transcontinental Railroad was finished, and the Spiral Jetty, which is an art installation that sticks out into the Great Salt Lake. It is way far away from everything. And we got home, some nice sunsets from the house, installed some more stuff, TV, fireplaces. The famous Wyoming wind started kicking up, as evidenced in this video from in the living room. And we also went to the final Wyoming home game. Kim then immediately started decorating for Christmas, figuring out where all her Christmas decorations were going to live in this new house. It's much smaller than our previous house, but she managed to cram most of them in, has some saved for once the basement is finished as well. But she got a lot of Christmas up early in November. We then flew to Ohio to visit Aaron for during his first semester in college. So we actually flew to Detroit because we combined this with a trip for yet another conference that Kim had that she was presenting at that was at Notre Dame. So Detroit was in the middle. So we went to the Kent State football game. We went back to Western Pennsylvania to visit both of our parents and some of our friends from when we were growing up. Then went to the conference at Notre Dame and then returned home after a detour through Bronner's Christmas Wonderland up in Michigan. After we got back, we got to finally get to really work on finishing this storage shed that we had been building. Clear fall days are giving us good views of the Rocky Mountains, Longs Peak, and the Stormy Peaks. And some really spectacular sunsets. And we finally finished the shed, got it painted and everything, and stuff moved into it. And I guess this was the last Wyoming football game, but I also went to Colorado to help Alex put wallpaper on their walls down there. Continued to have nice sunsets and views of Longs Peak. We then got to work trying to build a bedroom in the basement of the new house so that the kids would have somewhere to stay or sleep when they came to visit or were home for Christmas break. So, already to December, we continue to work on the bedroom. Got this whole thing built in about 2 weeks, I think. And ready for when the kids both got home. And in the middle of the month, Kim and I flew from Denver via Dallas to Monroe, Louisiana, where we attended our third graduation of commencement ceremony of the year, which was Kim graduating from the University of Louisiana Monroe with her doctorate in education and curriculum and development. It was all an online program, so this was actually the first time she was at the campus and got to see everything, but that was important, I thought, for her to go and be there in person to get her degree, because it's a great accomplishment. After which we returned home, or we returned back to Denver, I should say. Where we then stayed a night at the Gaylord Rockies Resort, which is right by the Denver airport, and went to their Christmas decorations and their ice thing, which was based on the Polar Express. So this is a big attraction that's made out of carved blocks of ice that we visited. This was a graduation / late anniversary present, I guess. And then after Christmas, we flew to Southern California because the Wyoming marching band was in the Rose Parade. So we flew a couple days early into Orange County Airport in Santa Ana, drove up to Anaheim, where we went to Disneyland. So Kim and I and Aaron went together. Aiden went with the band, but we were at Disneyland the same day, so he spent some time with us. After 2 days at Disneyland, we drove up to Pasadena to get ready for the Rose Parade. But on New Year's Eve, we drove from Pasadena over to Joshua Tree National Park and did a little bit of walking around and a short hike there. So it's pretty. I was there maybe 8 or 9 years ago when I was out in Southern California for work one time, but this was Kim and Aaron's first time at Joshua Tree. And then on New Year's Day, we saw the Rose Parade, saw Aiden in the Rose Parade, and then we went to what they call Float Fest afterwards, which is where they park all the floats at Pasadena High School, and you can go in and see them up close and talk to the people who built them and get more information on them. So after that, we went back, and the next day we flew back home, but we had an evening flight, so we went to Long Beach, went on the Queen Mary. Then we drove down the Pacific Coast Highway to Laguna Beach, where we spent a little bit of time on the beach. It was very foggy, but still pretty. And then back to Orange County Airport and flew back home. And that brings the year to a close. Next year we're going to have a lot of stuff going on, and probably not as much traveling, definitely not as much moving, but stay tuned and we'll have some exciting things still coming.